Good evening, everyone. And if you're watching this on catch up, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And wherever you are or whenever you are, thank you for joining us at this webinar. This is one of the webinars that we're holding as part of the United Kingdom Digital Health and Care series of webinars, the UKDHC. And I am Taimur Shoaib. I'm one of the directors of UKDHC, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce two of our speakers today who are figureheads in the digital health and care scene here in the United Kingdom, but also internationally. So first, can I ask Angus Wallace to give his presentation? The topic of today's presentation, the webinar, is going to be, what have we done in UKDHC over the past 6 months since we were incepted? So Angus, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Taimur, and it is a pleasure to be speaking to you all about UKDHC. And I thought I would give you a little bit of history first, so that you understood where we came from and where we are going to. So I'm going to put up a PowerPoint slides. And UKDHC is Digital Health and Care. And we are here to encourage people working in healthcare and in care professionally to deliver better care by using the technology more than they have done in the past. The history is that the Faculty of Clinical Informatics was closed down in February 2024 because of some difficulties the organization had. It moved to the British Computer Society, but a number of people involved in informatics were uncomfortable about that move. As a consequence, I, together with DJ Hamblin-Brown, Francois Talliard, Taimur Shoaib, and James Reid, set up UK Digital Health and Care as a not-for-profit community interest company. We created UKDHC to be inclusive, not exclusive. And we wish to do this for the benefit of our patients and those in care, whether they be patients, elderly, or disabled. In April 2024, we invited two additional directors, Katie Bjerken and David Wright, to join us. So we now have 7 directors looking after the organization. We have attracted 50 members, which from a start in April 2024 is good going, and they are working in different fields in nursing, pharmacy, physiotherapy, as well as being doctors. We've already identified better ways where we can collaborate and we can deliver better service through on-call teams and using electronic digital communications. We are not a commercial company. We are non-partisan, and we are here to help look after patients and people in care so that they get a better service. We have developed a collaboration with the University of Central Lancashire through Jane Fitzgerald, Senior Lecturer in Health Informatics. And we aim, since launching, to be inclusive. And we'll talk about inclusivity. We'll talk about the Health Service Journal, collaborations and sponsors, our annual Scientific Informatics Conference, our webinar program, which this is part of, and our video podcast library, which has been created this month and allows recordings to be prepared as podcasts and made available, open access to the whole of the world for people to to download and listen to. And we're going to cover some of the things that UKDHC is asking, which other people can't ask, because they may be unable to ask these things because of commercial links. So, inclusivity. All are welcome. We welcome nurses, pharmacists, therapists, professional care staff at all levels, as well as doctors. We want to encourage people to work in teams. We are aware that within our National Health Service in the UK, there is a tendency for silos to develop. And the problems that not working together as teams have highlighted in surgery is that if you have a surgical team where the surgeon is dominant, this rarely works to everybody's benefit. It's important to construct teams and that the IT teams are equal to the medical teams. So if you like, the techies, the medics, and the care people themselves are all working together. We do believe that the way the NHS has moved has resulted in there being too many leaders. And we believe there is now general support for improving function at the workplace and supporting those treating and caring for our patients. We recognise that those at the workplace do not want to spend their lives looking at a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone. And my experience has been on visiting friends in hospital that that is exactly what is happening at the moment. You go into a ward, the nursing staff are looking at their pads, their tablets. The doctors are looking at their smartphones. The nurse station is looking at their computer screens. Nobody's looking at the patient. And we've got to change that. And that is not the fault of the staff in hospital. It's the fault of the systems that have been placed in hospital that demand that the staff sit at these keyboards, entering data in order to satisfy their bosses. In relation to the Health Service Journal, it's a fantastic journal, and I have used it for many years. It costs £499 per annum for a personal subscription for all its facilities. And I negotiated in April as a fledgling organisation that UKDHC members are offered a reduced fee of £130 in 2024 and a reduction in 2025 to £200. So it will go up in 2025, but every member of UKDHC has access to this subsidised rate for the Health Service Journal. And I would encourage you to take that up because it is a good journal and it has a number of really interesting articles about what is happening in the health service. Now, in relation to collaborations, we as an organisation are very small and we are weak. But we can change that by collaborating with stronger partners. And we've already started to do that by collaborating with the University of Central Lancashire. And we hope to collaborate with Lancashire and South Cumbria Integrated Care. We've had discussions with Skills for Care about collaborating with their organisation. And we already have corporate sponsors. We have Careful and NHS Air Email as corporate sponsors. We have been told Salutaire are coming on board and possibly Insigniam. We ran a virtual conference on the 4th of September 2024. The background to that was that I had already run the Faculty of Clinical Information conferences between 2020 and 2023. I also ran the scientific program for their 4th conference in November 2023. These conferences that I ran were very successful, and I wanted to continue to run them because one of the things that is lacking at present is those people carrying out digital healthcare research do not have the opportunity they should have to present their research work. So we invite abstracts, select the best abstracts, and have them given as podium presentations. And we had 9 given as podium presentations in September. 3 of them were outstanding, and our judges decided that these should be awarded top prize, and these have been contacted, they've been awarded top prize, and you will be able to see their presentations as one of our podcasts shortly. We had invited guest speakers, 11 of them, high-quality guest speakers, national and international names, and the program is up on our website. We also had 4 workshops and international courses. And our feedback, which came back through our conference organisers, was excellent for both registrants and presenters. So, what about our webinars? Well, today you're listening to the first webinar where Taimur is chairing and I am presenting with David Wright. Next week it will be DJ Hamblin Brown, then Jane Fitzgerald, then George Kowalski, who's going to talk about how you can live at home as a frail elderly person supported by digital technology. That will be a lovely presentation. We're hoping that the Skills for Care group will be able to talk to us on the 6th of November. And on the 13th of November, we're going to have Will Monaghan, Group Chief Digital Information Officer for University Hospitals of Leicester and University Hospitals of Northampton, who is going to give us a lovely, challenging talk about the pros and cons of digital information about people in their medical records and what's going to happen in the next 10 years. What a visionary he must be. Then we have Dr. Hussain Gandalf Gandhi, who is a GP educator. He is a GP who has been teaching GPs across the UK how to use the IT apps and equipment that they've been provided with. And we're hoping that Nikki Turner, Clinical Digital Information Officer at Sherwood Forest Hospitals, is also able to present to us. All these presentations from both the annual scientific conferences and from the webinars will be converted to podcasts and available at that webpage. And we will also be doing special features podcasts in 2025. Now, we have numerous questions that we are asking, some of them quite awkward for the NHS. I'll give you a flavour. I'm going to talk to you about 5 of them. Why are we seeing maternity patients developing shock when they go into hospital for monitoring because of possible uterine bleeding not being identified, when intelligent watches can now record both pulse and blood pressure, feed that into a computer, and the computer can tell whether they're moving into shock. There have been 2 major cases this year of litigation which has been successful from patients who lost a child because they bled and were not picked up, and 1 fatality. 2, why are elderly patients' electronic prescriptions not available at pharmacies when they go to collect them? Why is there not an automatic confirmation of prescriptions available and built into the system? I think it's happening, but it's not there yet. Why have the principles of patients know best not been more widely adopted within the National Health Service? And why have we allowed the private healthcare sector to be isolated from the NHS electronic systems, now resulting in obstruction to collaboration between the 2 sectors that are actually now trying to work together? And here's a good one. Why is there a lack of digital catering for those with a range of disabilities, which could be achieved by introducing them or their families to strategies that are already available? A complex dissemination issue. So these are some of the questions, and the others appear on our 6-month report. And after we have had a presentation from David Wright, we're going to ask you for questions. Thank you very much.
Angus, thank you very much. We have some questions, but we're going to be asking them at the end of the of David's presentation, and we're just going to combine all our questions so that both of you can perhaps answer them. So, David, can I move on to you and ask you to deliver your presentation now, please? Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to take a big picture view, building on the last 6 months of what's been achieved by UKDHC. I'm going to cover some short, medium, and longer term aspirations at the end of the conference, at the end of the webinar. But I'd like to, first of all, just do the big picture stuff. And you can see how UKDHC can fit in and contribute to improving digital health across the whole spectrum of healthcare. We all know that one. That's an old favorite. We design the systems. We do. Nobody else. So we have the right to change them. So if something is not right, let's have a crack at making it right. So if we see a problem, let's raise the hand and look at how we can correct them. Now, some of the issues that Angus raised in those last 5 questions, they're system questions. And we have the ability with technology that's available nowadays to actually make some changes. But taking a helicopter view of the system, you've got volume and complexity. Looking at the different sectors, I've just broken it down into 3. That's the volume under the curve. Obviously, self-care, you've got a headache, you go to the pharmacy. You're able to treat yourself. Primary care, tertiary care. That's the volume of healthcare that's being delivered. GP tends to expand across all areas. Some of them have actually do have some visiting rights, would you believe, in some hospitals. Community pharmacy, hospital care, that's some of the outreach services. Allied health. When you look under the counter or under the bonnet of what's involved in the delivery of the care across this health system, you see it's quite amazing. Obviously, before I get to that, the volume, the pressure is to increase that dotted line right across the board. The aging population, demographics, chronic diseases, etc. That volume is increasing all the way across. The challenge for all of us is to move those two lines to the right. And technology can help. How can we move those two vertical lines to the right? In other words, primary care should be treating more complex patients. Self-care, everybody should know their blood pressure, their cholesterol levels. Everybody. A very simple education program. But when we look at the big picture, what's under all of those curves and in the framework? Obviously, the population's increasing, migration. In the NHS, there's 1.5 million. In social care sector, there's exactly the same number of staff. So there's 3 million people in the UK working on healthcare at the moment, or in healthcare. Carers, aged care facilities, the service providers, the trusts, mental health trusts, ambulances. There's 16,700 aged care homes, all with staff with limited levels of digital skill levels. So there are 3 million potential people working in the health system that if we raise those levels of education, the competency and skills, even just a little bit, we're going to make a major difference. That's when I hear about this long-term workforce plan, I think about when I read that, I think, are the universities geared up for it? Are there enough supervisors in the system, in the pipeline, to look after this long-term workforce plan that I've been reading? When we take that to the next level, we all know the funding pressures. We've got to use the funds better. We're going to see what happens in the October budget coming up. The political pressures, access, equity, waiting lists, ramping. Infrastructure, now they're talking about taking away a lot of the hospital renewal programs. And obviously, this is my key one. It's shifting those two lines. Going back to this framework. These are the key lines of integration. These are the major pressure points in the health system. People blocking up primary care, GP waiting list. Those that are waiting to get into hospitals. Those that clog up the emergency departments. The triaging system, the 1 to 5s. People that go to hospitals when they shouldn't, if there was general practice emergencies, emergency centers available. Wes Streeting recently said, these are the 3 big shifts. We as UKDHC must be front and center with some of these issues. The focus on hospital care, moving it to neighborhood and community services. I live in a region where a small community hospital has been closed. Patients have to travel a long way to get to a hospital. There's no step-down facilities. Moving from analog and utilizing the technological revolution, and from sickness to prevention. A very close colleague of mine who I work very closely with in Australia, the president of the AMA, he said at a conference, which everybody in the room, their mouths dropped, he said 80% of what a GP sees, a competent grandmother could look after. An amazing comment. But when you think of the reality, he said, I will fight you to the death for the 20%. So what we've got to ensure, if we're talking about self-care, that's all about education on that sector. And I'll come back to that. because UKDHC has a role to play right across the board. We're thinking about continuity of care and collaboration of care. That includes health and social care. Not just the IT within our ICU unit. I want to think about the aged care facilities as well, the social care, the communication between GPs and hospitals, and vice versa. Going back to that framework, I mentioned the key pressures, moving those 3 lines to the right. We heard at our conference about Tony Blair Institute talking about this digital health passport, or full interoperability and transferability of data right across the sectors, giving patients access, much easier access to see where they are in the system. This is a 10-year vision for the Blair Institute, but people are taking a lot of attention. Obviously, the privacy issues have to be dealt with first. Those are the key issues. Very quickly, I'm going to go into our short-term aspirations based on what you've just seen from those, the big picture stuff. Angus has mentioned this ongoing podcast library. We want to build the foundations of UKDHC so that it's financially stable. This is our 3-month aspirations. We've got plans of setting up a mentoring program and setting up a framework for a digital consortia, engaging with people that are with startups who don't know how to navigate the system. On the board of UKDHC, there are some wonderful individuals and part of the committee's executive committee as well, who have a wealth of knowledge, who are prepared to help and assist. We want to garner input from allied health, community health, aged care, and social care sectors, not just the tertiary sector. As Angus said, we are inclusive, not exclusive. And after 3 months, I'd really like to see 100 members plus 10 corporate members. We've mentioned we got 4 corporate members, and there are others in the pipeline that we're negotiating with. Let's build the foundations of UKDHC to make a difference in the future and ongoing. After 12 months, our aspirations, once again, financial stability. UKDHC is a not-for-profit. That also means it's a not-for-loss. So we have to be stable. Any money that is made goes back into member services. Members come first. We want to expand the reach and influence via the memberships across the health sector and develop special interest groups to cover social care, aged care, and allied health as well. After 12 months, my belief that the aspirations is to have 300 plus members and 30 corporate members. Deliver number 2, our second virtual conference in 2025 to build on what we achieved this year. The results were excellent, feedback. It was small, but very, very high quality. Develop key partnerships to influence coordination and collaboration. That's what UKDHC is all about. And it is my belief that there are many, many groups that are out there educating in this sort of sector, not just the universities, but other institutions, other educational providers. We should be a clearinghouse to act for anybody who wants to improve whatever the software, wherever they are, wherever they work in that framework, so that they come to us and look at opportunities within the health sector, the education sector. And we can help promote those institutions accordingly. We need to get right behind them. Longer term, ongoing financial stability. You notice that I always put this at the top. Make sure that we're financial and everything goes back to the members. Expand the reach and influence to include overseas. We need to have partnership agreements with different IT, IM, digital health, informatics groups all over the world. The special interest groups are operational and they influence policy development in the so that you get the politicians come to us and ask us questions. So after 3 years, membership 500 plus 50 corporate. That's our aspirations, to grow the base and have key partnerships within the health systems to make sure that we are active and influential. And as I mentioned, we want to be the go-to resource, the health and social care sectors. We want to influence the skills and competency levels right across the board. Thanks very much. Happy to take questions.
David, Angus, thank you very much. And we are now open for questions. So we have some questions already, and the questions are really talking about what are we going to do over the course of time, because we've heard what we've done over the last 6 months. And so one of our questions is, well, we know that the modern healthcare workforce needs to have digital skills. But the question is, what kind of digital skills should we have? And what is our role? What is the role of UKDHC to decide on the digital skill set that the modern healthcare workforce needs? Angus, can I ask you for your thoughts on that question first? And then David, I'll move on to you.
Well, the first thing is that you have to be able to use a tablet, you've got to be able to use an iPhone, and you've got to be able to manipulate around. One of the groups that we have collaborated with is West Notts College, and they had a very interesting project. They were asked by Nottinghamshire County Council to train their refuse teams to use tablets for their work. Why did they want to do that? Because they wanted to make sure that their rotas were organized in a way that they could use their rotas. They got round the right trip in order to pick up the waste bins. They were able to communicate back to base about where they were and what any problems they had were. And this was taking people who had very few IT skills and bringing them up to speed so that they could become more digitally effective. Now, our nurses and therapists are at a higher level, but they're still struggling with using the technology in hospital. They're still having a real problem with being able to jump from one app to another app. And quite honestly, the systems don't make it very easy, because if you are, for instance, a radiologist, you often have to have 3 or 4 screens open at once. And you've got to be able to jump from one screen to another, and they don't speak to each other. So there are all sorts of technical skills that we can encourage them to improve and provide courses for them. Now, this is one of the things that the University of Central Lancashire is doing. And I wonder if Jane would just like to talk about how they are trying to deliver upskilling of digital competence through their courses. And what I would love to do is I would love to pinch Jane's courses, and I would love to put them as open access, but I can't do that without money. If somebody would come along and support us, we could have an absolutely super project offering NHS and care staff an opportunity to teach themselves on the web in a way which has always been a bit of a challenge in the past. So I'd like to hand over to Jane now and ask what she feels, how she is running her course and what she feels about that. You don't need to answer the question about me pinching your course.
Thank you, Angus. I'm sure my dean might have a bit of a problem with that idea. Yes, so we've got the various levels of health informatics, which means that a very, very wide range of healthcare professionals, literally from healthcare assistants all the way up to consultants, can actually pick their way through a whole variety of modules according to where they are and where they want to be in the future. Which is fantastic. I mean, we've got somebody who's just joined the MSc in Health Informatics, sponsored by her care home group. And, you know, they are looking at her becoming their digital transformation person when she's completed the Health Informatics course, which is fantastic. The other thing we do throughout the university, but particularly with nursing and midwifery, is we embed those essential digital skills at every level of the programme. And that means, you know, I do a session every year for all of the healthcare professionals across the university about health informatics. So the whole time, everything they do, you know, we have sim units. I'm taking part in a paramedic simulation next week, which is, you know, a lot of that is absolutely digital. How are they liaising with other professionals? What are they doing with the information that they've got? Where can they get information from? So it's about giving those students the confidence that they can go out and use all these different systems. That's what we do.
Angus, Jane, thank you very much. David, do you have any comments to add on the digital skill set for the modern healthcare workforce?
Whatever piece of equipment we're using, an iPad, an iPhone, remote patient monitoring, or so on, it's that use of that piece of data, that whether it's a nursing environment, whether it's an aged care environment, whatever it is, it's basically, it's what's happening. It's descriptive. Diagnostic, why did it happen? Predictive, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? And prescriptive, what should we do about it? So whatever tool a clinician has, an aged care facility, a community care, that's the process that they need to work through and share the information, collaborate with the team around them. I've always believed that the word team stands for together everyone achieves more, working as a team. And I've believed in that for such a long time that you cannot do anything unless you've got that team around you working together. So in an environment where there's a lot of IT and information going on, it's what you do with that information is the most important.
Thank you very much. We have a next question. So we had a conference on the 4th of September, and we all felt it was very successful. Are we planning another one, and when will that be? David, do you want to carry on, seeing as you're already speaking? Do you want to carry on to comment on that?
Well, there was talk amongst the executive about having another virtual one at the end of the first quarter next year, but that's still up in the air for debate. But it was successful, and it's easy to, these virtual environments, it's easy to get people to commit the time to be involved rather than travel a long distance and spend time traveling out of their work environment and so on. So I think a virtual one next year, and possibly a couple of face-to-face in different parts of the country as more of get-together for members, more like serendipity. And
how long do you think the next conference should be for us? And should it be virtual or face-to-face, Angus?
I would love for us to have a face-to-face conference, but I don't think that's going to happen until 2026. And the reason is financial. We need more sponsors in order to provide that. We need more sponsors in order to provide that. And once we have the sponsors, we can actually start laying down plans. Our conference organisers were very sympathetic and supportive, Healthcare Conferences UK, but we could not have run that conference without them, because they were very, very good in giving us subsidized rates as a new organisation getting its feet under the table, and I'm very grateful to them. We will have to make sure that we generate a profit from the next one. We didn't from this one, but it was very successful, and the next one will be, even if it's just a virtual one in 2025.
Thank you, Will. We know these are all issues that startups have, and we certainly are a startup, even though we may be a CIC and we're a company charity, as it were. Okay, so we have another question. Well, we know that research and clinical trials take place all the time, and there's a lot of information regarding the outcomes of clinical trials. And the question is, how can the flow of information between the NHS and research trials be improved to benefit patients both in the short and the long term? Angus, you're already on. Do you want to make a comment?
There's some very, very good research taking place at the moment, and that is bearing fruit. It's showing us things that can be done to make our healthcare and care in the home more efficient and cheaper. The huge burden that the researchers have is transforming their research into practice, in getting the NHS to agree to include their projects into mainline NHS practice. And part of the reason for this, in my view, is over-regulation of the process of doing that. You have to jump hurdles which are enormously high. And what is happening with researchers in the UK at the moment is that they are finding it so difficult to get the NHS to take on their projects that they are taking them to America, to South Africa, to Australia, and they are marketing them there, where the obstructions to actually getting them onto the market and being used in the workplace are far less. So I think the government, the UK government, needs to take a close look at the regulatory process and try and fast track the really good research projects so that they do bear fruit within the hospital and care community.
David, what do you think is the hallmark of a really good research project, and one that provides answers to some of the big ticket item questions that we have in information technology and its link to healthcare?
Well, I've always used that acronym TARB, T-A-R-B, think ahead and reason back. In other words, what are we trying to achieve? What's the solution? And look at all the stepping stones to get there. When I look at some of the big picture stuff that the NHS is trying to solve, and I think about the resource allocation, you mentioned the top heavy with regards to the leadership and so on, and it's getting more frontline providers in place. So how do we get there? I think there should be some really good research undertaken on those key issues. So we look at the outcomes that we want, look at the stepping stones to get there, and then everybody roll their sleeves up to get behind it and set the university some tasks to get on with. You know, I can see Jane smiling there. Let's get behind it. The Times had their the top 10 universities in the world come out today, the list of all the universities, and we got some fantastic people. Let's get their minds targeted towards how can we improve the NHS, how can we improve the health system from a delivery mode. Get the business guys behind it, get the marketing guys behind it. We talked about that self-education. Let's get behind those issues as a country. Let's really shift those vertical lines to the right. Sorry, I'm very passionate about that, Taimur.
Good to be passionate. We have one final question, and we're trying to limit this to a 45-minute webinar. So, Angus, one final question for you. There was you were talking in one of your slides that there's a possibility of maternity patients using smartwatches linked to a central system. Have pilot studies been done on this, or what's the progress that has been made on this particular?
I did a simple Google search, and there's actually very little written about it. There is a lot of advertising by the smartwatch manufacturers saying their watches are good for monitoring during pregnancy, but actually the amount of research being carried out in hospital using smartwatches is very small. I came across one American university which had used smartwatches combined with other sensors looking at the abdominal wall and measuring tension in the abdominal wall, where they were monitoring pregnant patients at home using these devices. But I was unable to find one where hospitals actually use them. And it could be simply that smartwatches that you need to measure blood pressure and pulse are a bit expensive. You need to make sure you don't lose them once they're brought into clinical use. And the NHS has a problem because the NHS is not allowed to charge patients in any way at all. So if people came into hospital and were given a smartwatch to monitor them during their pregnancy, there is a real concern about them disappearing. And so that may be the reason why we haven't seen the research being carried out. I don't know, but I believe that that would be very fruitful, and I would encourage teams to start thinking about that.
If I may, Taimur, can I make a comment?
Please, of course.
I'm a great believer in this self-care issue as well. And one of the points I raised during the conference, during my lecture there, was anything to do with self-care. If you're going to buy a smartwatch that measures, now they can measure O2 and they can measure not just the blood pressure, but it should be tax deductible. Very simple. Make it tax deductible. Encourage people to use those. Make training shoes tax deductible, running shoes. Memberships to gymnasiums, walking groups, anything that encourages self-care, make it tax deductible. Encourage people to get involved.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. I think we should call this webinar now to an end, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone who has attended, and either in person today or in the future. But special thanks to David and Angus, and an extra special thanks to Jane, who was put on the spot and provided her information with such elegance. Thank you, everyone, and we all look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Good evening.
Thank you.